What do you do when you are headed for divorce or considering divorce like you were, and you've never handled your money?
Be more strategic before actually getting the divorce. And I don't want to sound like you should be covert or anything like that, but maybe you should get involved with your husband about where you're invested, what you're invested in. Make sure you have the passwords to all the investments. Make sure you know how all the bills are paid.
Hello, hello, Hill Squad. We have an amazing guest today who's all about balancing health and wealth. Get ready for Alison Kosik. She is a powerhouse financial journalist on a mission to empower women everywhere with financial literacy through her new book, What's Up with Women and Money, out March 4th. In it, you will find invaluable lessons straight from successful women like Jessica Alba, entrepreneurs like Shark Tank's Barbara Corcoran. But today, Allison is here to break down exactly how to secure your finances during life's toughest moments, whether you are going through a divorce, facing a layoff, or navigating a natural disaster. She's got the step-by-step strategies to help you stay financially strong no matter what. So we're going to dive in. But first, our quote of the day. When you lack confidence about money, it's unconsciously affecting your confidence in other areas too. And that is from my friend Tony Robbins. But friends, let's get to it with Allison. So Allison, so nice to talk with you.
So great to be here. Thanks, Maria.
You wrote this book, What's Up with Women and Money.
There it is.
Oh, you're wearing the same color as your book. I love it. Is that your
Oh, I
favorite
didn't even
color?
realize that. It's actually not. I didn't even realize I did that. Maybe it's becoming like subconscious at this point.
That's so funny. So I was really fascinated reading your story because you have been a financial journalist, and reading your story about the fact that you were not getting a divorce because you were so scared because you hadn't been dealing with your finances and the money end of life is so ironic because you spent so much of your life in front of the camera talking about money. And so I thought that was kind of interesting, and what an interesting person to be able to learn from. That's pretty relatable, kind of on the highest of levels, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, and that's sort of the hypocrisy of the whole thing, right? I would go to the New York Stock Exchange as CNN's business correspondent, but in my own life, I didn't have my personal finance shit together at all. I let my then husband handle all the big financial decisions, and that was by choice. And so when our marriage started to fail, I was frozen to leave, and I stayed in the marriage longer than I probably should have because I was very unhappy. And I did that because I was thinking, wow, how am I going to handle all these big financial decisions? And what if I make a mistake? And it's not just me. I've got two kids, my son and my daughter under the age of 10. What if I lose all of our money? So I stayed in the marriage longer than I probably should have. But when I got out of it, I realized that there are a lot of women. We don't talk about it because we are badass in our jobs, but in our personal lives, we may not be. And I'm not talking about all women. Many women aren't involved as they should be in the finances of their personal life. They don't have the visibility that they really should have. And it's not something we talk about. And so I realized that a lot of other women were going through the same thing. And they had that same shame and embarrassment about it because if we're really great at our jobs, we don't want to really admit that I don't know how to invest really. I don't know how much life insurance I should be carrying. I don't know how to buy a car. That's embarrassing because we want to look like we've got our stuff together, right? So when I realized there were a lot of other women like that, I thought, you know what? I'm going to write a book about it to help women because if I would have had I mean, I'm plugging my book here, but if I would have had a book like the one I have, and not just giving the tips on how to do all of these financial things, but also there's a piece of the book where I talk about confidence because that's a huge part of it. I think I would have gotten out of my marriage sooner, and especially after I realized so many other women were in the same camp.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I guess I would love to know why didn't you have more of a role in your finances?
For me, it was a choice. And I think a lot of it had to do with overall confidence. And in researching this book, actually, I realized that there are reasons why many women aren't involved the way we should be involved in our personal finances. It could be the culture at large. It could be, stereotypes. It could be what, and the one conclusion that I found through interviews that I did was we can actually blame our parents for this. Yes, we can blame our parents because we watched them how they handled money. Were they always struggling? Was it mom who didn't do much, but it was dad who took the reins of all the financial stuff? Did he take the lead? And then I found out it was also a confidence thing. And with me, that's exactly what it was. It was a confidence thing. Um, I grew up with a dad who was addicted to drugs, and I got a daily dose of emotional abuse just about every day. He said I wouldn't amount to anything. He called me fat. He called me stupid. And, I believed him after a while. And I'm not sure if it was the drugs or him talking. I mean, it was the 70s. I was growing up, and he was on cocaine, Quaaludes. It was the 70s. Funny token, by the age of 8, I actually knew how to roll a joint because I would be at the breakfast table eating my morning breakfast cereal, and he would be separating, I guess, I don't smoke weed, and that's fine if you do, whatever, but he would be separating the seeds from what you smoke. And so I would watch him, how he would make the joints, and he would roll them up and he would line them up so perfectly. So, I'd go to school and okay, my dad rolls joints in the morning, but there was
I
a more
remember reading
insidious.
that right over here and being like, oh my God.
I know. And weed's not a big deal, but you know what, in the 70s at age 8, it was a big deal. And that wasn't what really had the impact on me. It was the impact of the Coke and I guess the Quaaludes and what that turned my dad into. He was always angry. He was always yelling, and he was super unpredictable. It was like he was an emotional terrorist. I never knew what dad I was going to get. Um, I think it was the drugs. He was super unpredictable. And at one point, I didn't even have friends come over to the house because, and I have my adult friends asking, well, why did I never come over? And I was like, oh, I never even realized it. But I
You weren't
literally
used to
didn't
it.
have well, I was embarrassed, first of all, about what was going on in my house, but even more than that, if my friends came over, Maria, I wouldn't know what dad I would get that day. Like, what mood would he be in? Would I be completely embarrassed? So I, it was chaos. I lived in chaos. It was dysfunction, and thank God I got out of that dysfunction. I vowed to not go back to live in that house again. And I didn't because I mean, it could have gone one of two ways. I could have become a drug addict. It would have been very easy. I knew where he hid the coke. I knew where all the drugs were. And I decided not to go that way. I decided to break the cycle and to go the other way and to never go back to that house to live. And the way to do it was I realized I could go to school and I did really well in high school and then get out and go to college, and I wouldn't have to rely on my parents for anything. And that was really what I wanted to do and what I wound up doing. Um, and I think what wound up happening was I was able to kind of turn that adversity into something more positive because I used it as fuel, to get me out. Like I didn't want to be a victim in this. Like I'm not a victim child of a drug addict. I didn't want to be that. And I think I did turn it around. But dovetailing it back to why that's impactful for how I handled my finances, it impacted my confidence in every way. Being beat down every day at home growing up, um, I grew up with no confidence, and so I didn't have the confidence in my ability to make big financial decisions. I didn't think I had um, the knowledge. I didn't think I had the judgment that comes with the experience of doing the personal financial things. And that's why I stayed in that marriage as long as I did, despite going on CNN and being their financial correspondent at the New York Stock Exchange. Yeah.
Okay, so I think everyone who's listening is going to find this so relatable, but my question is, where did you find the confidence to be on TV?
That's a really good question. I don't know.
And to talk about super complicated stuff, by the way, where like this is like I just find it such an interesting human experiment because you're told you're fat, you're told all these horrible things. I'm so curious where you were able to find that in you to be able to do that.
I was thinking about this because I was like, I know she's going to ask me something like this. I have a feeling. I think that, and I didn't know this, of course, when I was a kid. You don't reflect when you're a kid, and I only realize this now that I think with when I was growing up in that environment with my dad, with just all of that chaos, waking up in the morning, never knowing what he'd be screaming about that day. It was like, I'd be shaking. Like I would literally be, I would keep my door closed in the morning when I was, at night when I was sleeping. And then when I would open the door, I'd literally take a breath and wonder what I was going to open my door to. I had no idea. But you know what? I think what powered me forward was as on the worst days at home were the ones where I felt, believe it or not, more empowered. I was like, I'm not going to let you and what's going on with you keep me down. What you're doing is empowering me forward. I want to be a journalist and I'm not going to let you stop me. And you're being awful to me today, but I'm going to use that as fuel to study harder and to be more disciplined in my schoolwork and to get the grades that I need so I have the power to get accepted to schools that I want to go to, and I will have the choice because I'll take out loans. I will have the choice whether I want to go to those or not, and you can't say anything because I will be 18 years old. And that was my thinking that the
Wow.
crueler you are to me, the more empowered I feel, and that's how I felt. I think that's how I got
Wow.
out of it.
Wow. That's a really wise human to be able to think like that and to make it your fuel and to not be afraid. Like I would have been afraid to take loans.
Well, I mean, my parents did help me. They knew I wanted to go to college. One thing that they did, they pushed me to get a good education. But my dad put parameters on that. You can't go here, you can't go there. I mean, I got this scholarship at University of Miami. It was almost fully paid, and I said, "Sorry, I'm not going to go. I need to get far away from here." You know.
Yeah.
So I mean, they helped me get the loans. We didn't have much money anyway, so it was easy, and I just went on my merry way. Yeah, and
Wow.
here's what's sad, Maria. This is the first time I'm publicly talking about this stuff, and it's for
I
me,
can
it's a big
feel
deal to
it.
talk about this, and never talked about this publicly at all. And my dad doesn't know that I'm talking publicly about it, and
Wow.
I didn't have the guts to tell him, and I figured he will find out through the ether. I do still talk with him. I talk with my mom. I talk with them probably once a week, and they're not going to be happy with me. And but I here's the thing: before I wrote this stuff in my book, I went to my kids who are 19 and 22, and Sydney and Ethan, and I said, Sydney, Ethan, I want you to read what I'm putting in this book. And if anything in this book embarrasses you, I will take it out and I will not talk about it. And my daughter looks at me and said, Mom, you didn't make him do these things to you, and you can talk about your story and what happened, and he can't stop you. And I was like, wow, she's really
Oh,
mature. Yeah. Yeah.
wow.
I wanted to make sure that I wouldn't embarrass them because some of the stuff is embarrassing and there's hypocrisy involved. Their mom, talked about finance news on TV and in her own personal life, she didn't have it together. There's a lot of hard reality coming out, and my kids are
Wow.
great. So
Well, I think you're amazing
thank
to
you.
stand up and have the courage to tell your story. It is really scary. I know that I've had, my own battles with like how much can you share about certain things because I like to be open. But it is hard when it's going to compromise other people. So it's, you obviously did it the right way where you asked them, but um I'm curious also like because I thought maybe your answer could be that you were so busy, it was too hard to handle all of that, because that makes a lot of sense as well, knowing what it's like to be on TV. You are literally just, a machine. You're nonstop.
And you're exactly right, Maria. Part of it was, I mean, it doesn't have to be one reason why as women, we aren't as involved as we should be. Part of it was the confidence issue. The other part was, yeah, I was busy and I was really busy, with my job at CNN and raising two kids. And the last thing I wanted to do when I went home after using my brain all day is go and actually learn about the personal finance aspects of it. I don't want to, like it was during the financial crisis, I remember. I don't want to know how to refinance the mortgage. Husband, you do it, and I let him
Yeah.
do it all. I don't want to. He would try to get me into learning how to invest, and I'd be like, I'm so tired. I don't have the energy. You do it. But here's the thing: that's a dangerous thing because We don't know, sure, life gets in the way, we get really busy, but life could also get messy on a dime. And, you know, there's divorce in my case, or God forbid, your husband could suddenly die. Do you know how to pay the mortgage every month? What about your utilities? Your investment accounts? Do you know where all of your investment accounts are? Do you know all the passwords to your accounts? Do you have an estate plan together? Like all this stuff, if you're not involved now, when there's not a crisis, it can get really dangerous because you don't want to wait. It's sort of like you have to get involved now, and that's sort of what I wrote in the book because I realized that when I was needing that knowledge, I didn't have it and had to sit in it for a really long time without it.
We're going to take a quick moment. I want to get into all of the things, of course, that we need to be prepared for. Because I always say, better to be prepared and not have had the opportunity. I want to get into a lot of this. Like, what do you do when you're headed for divorce and you've never handled your money, which is what you had to deal with? And what do you do when you lose your job unexpectedly, which you had to deal with? What do you do when you've dealt with, you're dealing with a natural disaster that's maybe taken your home, preventatively and post. So I want to cover all these topics. But first, friends, the people who help us keep the lights on here. In case you missed it, it's Black History Month. It's time to honor the men and women who've made significant contributions and achievements throughout history, like NASA's Katherine Johnson, Dr. Martin Luther King, Barack and Michelle Obama, and Macy's is celebrating it in a really cool way that has a real impact. So when you guys shop at Macy's.com or in store, you can choose to donate to UNCF. Your donation will fund scholarships for students at HBCUs or historically Black colleges and universities, which help alleviate financial burden. And get this, it's even proven to increase graduation rates, which is amazing. Macy's has also done a great job by highlighting Black owned and founded brands when you shop, which makes the celebration of Black History Month so much better and so much more meaningful. So be sure to shop now until February 28th at a Macy's near you or Macy's.com. So, Allison, what do you do when you are headed for divorce or considering divorce like you were, and you've never handled your money?
It's overwhelming. It was overwhelming for me. And I was having the thought of, oh my gosh, where do I start? And it's really hard to figure out where. If I would have done things differently, because I didn't do any of the stuff I'm about to say, I would suggest, first of all, be more strategic before actually getting the divorce. And I don't want to sound like you should be covert or anything like that, but maybe you should. Get involved in, with your husband about where you're invested, what you're invested in. Make sure you have the passwords to all the investments. Make sure you know how all the bills are paid. Make sure you understand what kind of life insurance he has. How much is he carrying? Does he have disability insurance? Also find out about if there's an estate plan, is there a will? Um, on your investments, by the way, make sure the beneficiaries are who they should be. Are they you? Are they your kids? Obviously, when you get a divorce, it's going to change from you, and he can change the beneficiaries, but you want to at least make sure that the beneficiaries are not right now to somebody who you do not get along with. There's an interview I did finding out that a woman who lost her husband, the beneficiary was to the brother-in-law who she does not get along with, and that's not good. Um, so you want to have great visibility over everything financial in your house. And I would also suggest, if you're really strategic and you know early on that things aren't going well, I would open up your own investment account. I would open up your own high yield savings account. And especially with the investments, I would be putting money into those investments every month. And that way you prepare for yourself for what the inevitable will be, and that is getting a divorce. I guess the bottom line is gather as much knowledge as you can about your financial picture as you can in advance before you agree to any divorce or say the words out loud, I want a divorce.
So if you create your own account, that doesn't really help you because everything generally has to get split.
Yes, but Yes, it will get split, but it's also good to that you could also open up an account just for yourself to protect yourself.
God
Obviously,
forbid they stole everything you're saying.
yeah, just to have some sort of cushion. I mean, I know that, listen, a forensic accountant could be called in and all that, and that's fine, but um, which actually wouldn't be a bad thing if you really don't have good visibility on where everything is. Um, I think the bottom line is really just know where everything is and have those passwords.
Yeah.
And make sure that there's joint ownership of the accounts as well. That's top of mind, which hopefully there already is, that the accounts are not in just his name. That could be trouble.
Are you able to share with us, and I don't know how much you can, but were there downfalls that you had to deal with that like were there detrimental things that happened because you weren't involved in it?
No, thank God.
Okay.
Our divorce was amicable, and I mean, there are things I would go back. I guess the one piece of advice I would give is, as much as you want to get the divorce over with, don't be in a rush. I was in a rush just to get it done. I want to get this over with. I want to move on with my life, and I agreed to things that I shortchanged myself on a few things. On like I shortchanged myself, let's say, on he's going to be listening to this being like, oh, Allison, just the value of the house, and things like, HOA fees, and so he's not picking up any of that, and with which, with taking care of child expenses, I let some of that stuff go just because I I wanted to just end the proceedings. He actually lost his job during our divorce proceedings, and I felt bad for him. So I took a lesser amount than I probably should have, um, in child support, thinking that he would come back and give me back the money. That didn't happen, but that's okay. You know what? I felt like a good human being. I felt bad for him, and so I agreed to a lesser amount. That's okay. But I guess the main thing is don't be in a rush. Like I was in a rush. Just make sure you really. One thing that I didn't do, actually, and come to think of it, that I should have done, is literally, and this is with any budgeting, literally budget out. And if you have visibility, you can do it. But if you don't, and I didn't have the visibility, and that's probably why I got shortchanged, is budget out all the outgoing money. Like I never thought about the HOA fees that come with owning this
Mm-hmm.
house,
Well, because you
which,
weren't handling any of the finances.
right. And so I didn't even think, add that into part of the child support. No, I didn't, that was just one thing. Like, yes. So if you have better visibility, you'll be able to know where you won't get shortchanged.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like I always say you have to be the CEO of your health, but we have to be the CEO of our lives as well. And it's annoying because it's daunting and there's a lot. Um, but unfortunately, we can't think everything's always forever because
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah, life,
always
yeah,
forever.
life can turn on a dime. Everything's sweet and nice now, but life can turn on a dime. Yes.
Yeah. So, okay, what do you do when you lose your job unexpectedly?
Hmm. Okay, so this is where I did have my financial act together. So I was let go from CNN, part of one of their mass layoffs, in March 2023. I spent more than 15 years at CNN. It was like my second family. Loved it there. Great opportunity. I wouldn't have changed a thing. I had a really, really good time there, and enjoyed the opportunities that they offered me. Lucky for me, I had an emergency savings account. And that really saved me. I mean, I did have severance, but that goes fast when you're not working. And having that emergency savings cushion definitely saved me from having to completely stress out about money. Now, however, leaving CNN was super emotional for me because it was like my second family. I uh, I had this recurring dream over months at a time of being laid off, like different people laying, like it would be different people laying me off. And I'd wake up and be like, oh my God, it's happened again. I was laid off again. I think it was part of like a grieving process, a mourning process. I mean, I think grieving isn't just about death, it's about having a change that you didn't expect. And I think I was really grieving that loss of that of being away from CNN.
Yeah.
And but so I think I was
Well,
more
also they
sad.
were your constant, where your husband wasn't the constant, like that was your
Yeah.
constant.
Yes, yes, that was well, then that was my obviously my main source of income. And then when that was gone, I was just I maybe I didn't realize it, although I had my cushion, that you worry about, will I be able to get another job? What does the future hold now? Sure, of huge that is a huge issue. But as far as the actual money goes, I had taken care of myself. I had built up my savings. And if I can leave you with one bit of advice to everybody, no matter what, you need to pay yourself first. That means pay yourself to your emergency savings account and don't touch it. Leave it for that emergency when you need to get into that account. And don't feel guilty if you have to get into that account and use it, because I did during this time, because you can always replenish it. And that's what it's there for.
So when you say pay yourself, what do you mean?
So when you get paid at your job, right, part of your money obviously goes to bills, part of it goes to hopefully your investments, and part of it goes to the fun stuff. And yes, part of it needs to go to something called an emergency savings account, which I recommend having at least 9 to 12 months of living expenses in there. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
going to take a lot to build up, but start somewhere. Start small. Don't put a lot of pressure on yourself. But you gotta start socking away little bits of money into that account, because one day that rainy day will come. It's inevitable of some sort where you're going to
Yep.
need that cushion.
I remember reading Tony Robbins' Money Master the Game. Did you read that book?
I have not. Tell me.
Oh my God, game changing, changed my life.
Mm.
And he talked about a US postal worker back in like the 30s that he worked for the post office. And his friend said, you need to save. He's like, I don't make anything to save. He's like, I literally am paycheck to paycheck. He goes, well, what if the government came in and put a 10% tax on you? What would you do? He's like, well, I'd have to pay it. So from that moment on, he started saving 10% of his checks. And because of the power of compounding, within whatever amount of years it was, he ended up being a multimillionaire just off of saving that. And that really stuck with me. And I also, for me in my life, I was always afraid of money because we had so many challenges growing up. And so I was always the squirrel squirreling money away. And when I looked back, I was like, oh, I saved more than 10%. I'm like, oh, okay, I did good. And I was so proud. And then I remember Whoopi Goldberg years ago pulled me aside and was like, you need to be saving 10% of your check. And I was like, oh, yeah, 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 yeah. No, I've done better than that, Whoopi. And she was like, okay, good for you. But I think, you know, it's true. I've had health crises come in where you have to tap in. There's been so many things where you have to tap into that. But we can't assume everything's going to be rosy in our health, in our marriages, in our families' lives, in look, the fires, the natural disasters, there's so much that's going on. And it is a lot to have to consider. Like I had somebody on after the fires that explained that whatever you purchased your house at is what you'll end up getting from insurance if you didn't update the insurance on the house with any updates on the house. So you won't get the equity that you thought you could get. That's devastating. Like for my housekeeper, for example, who let's say she bought her house for 150,000. It's worth well over 1 million now. She would never make that money. She would only get the 150,000 because she's never had an insurance agent come in and update what that
That's
property is
right.
valued at. But
Yeah.
nobody knows this stuff. We don't know. And so, or even like even more complicated shit, like when you are investing for the first time, most people get brokers. I remember my parents had a broker. And it wasn't until I read Tony's book where he talked about broker versus fiduciary and how a fiduciary is a fiducial responsibility to do what's in your best interest, where a broker doesn't. So when you look at your mutual funds, it's like Coca-Cola A, Coca-Cola B, Coca-Cola C. What are the differences? Well, what they're charging you behind the scenes and you don't
Yeah.
know.
You got
Coca-Cola
to pay
A,
attention to the fees
the
too.
fees are different. So then
Yes.
your stock or your mutual fund could be winning and you're underwater because of the fees. So
Yeah.
there's so much to learn. It is very overwhelming, but there are books like yours. Again, it's called What's Up with Money. What's up? What's up with women and money? Forgive me. And Tony's books as well that can educate you. You'll feel empowered. You will feel more confident. And then you can start taking baby steps to adjust and fix and arrange so you're prepared.
Yeah, and it's in those baby steps that you take that you gain that confidence because the reality is for many women, it's not that we're incapable or incompetent. We're just not confident because we're not actually involved in the financial aspects of our lives. But once we get in there and roll up our sleeves, we'll gain the knowledge. This isn't such a ginormous mountain to climb. You don't
Yeah.
have to be a financial expert to gain control of your relationship with money. And I think just don't overestimate what's required to scale this mountain and instead do nothing and procrastinate and delay and pawn it off to somebody else. Instead of doing that, get in there. It's more important to be invested in the market than to have it 100% figured out.
All right, friends, we're going to pause the conversation here, but be sure to tune in to the podcast tomorrow for part 2 of Allison's interview. She's going to be sharing very valuable financial advice directly for those who are afraid of a natural disaster hitting their area or have now dealt with a natural disaster. And for those who are recovering and rebuilding from the disasters like the recent fires in LA, and so much more. You are not going to want to miss this. There's so many important things you guys need to know and start preparing for. In the meantime, be nice people, make good choices, and be present. And if you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and episode. Healing is possible, friends, and it happens here. Hey, Heal Squad. We have been on quite the journey together, and we're hearing from so many of you just how much this show is helping you heal and get better, and it makes us feel so good. We love, love, love it, and we just ask that you don't keep it to yourself. Spread the message and share the show or your favorite episode with your friends. And if you want to help us even more, you can leave us a 5-star rating and a comment on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and follow us on Instagram at Heal Squad. You can also DM us anytime because we love connecting with you. And finally, you can also join us on Patreon for our monthly live heal events with world-class healers and ad-free episodes exclusive only to Patreon and our Super Heal Squad for as little as $10 a month. So go to patreon.com/Heal Squad to join. Getting better isn't easy, friends, but as I say all the time, it's a whole lot easier if we can do it together. We love you all so much, and we love doing this thing called life with you.
This podcast and all related content published or distributed by or on behalf of Maria Menounos or mariamenounos.com is for informational purposes only and may include information that is general in nature and that is not specific to you. Any information or opinions expressed or contained herein are not intended to serve as or replace medical advice, nor to diagnose, prescribe, or treat any disease, condition, illness, or injury, and you should consult the healthcare professional of your choice regarding all matters concerning your health, including before beginning any exercise, weight loss, or healthcare program. If you have or suspect you may have a healthcare emergency, please contact a qualified healthcare professional for treatment. Any information or opinions provided by a guest expert or host featured within website or on company's podcast are their own, not those of Maria Menounos or the company. Accordingly, Maria Menounos and the company cannot be responsible for any results or consequences or actions you may take based on information or opinions.